Good evening and welcome to Myths for Sleep. I'm James, and tonight we'll journey into ancient Greek mythology with the profound story of Themis. Discover how this gentle goddess of divine justice and natural order shaped the very foundations of cosmic law and brought harmony to both gods and mortals. If this story guides you toward peaceful sleep, please like this video as it truly helps my channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments which mythological tale you'd love to hear next. Settle in comfortably and let yourself be carried away by this timeless legend of wisdom and eternal peace. In the beginning, when the world was young and chaos still danced through the cosmos like wild flames consuming everything in their path, there emerged a presence of profound stillness. The very air seemed to hold its breath as something new stirred in the primordial depths of creation. This was not the violent birth of mountains thrust skyward by titanic forces, nor the explosive emergence of stars igniting in the void. This was something infinitely more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful. Themis, born from the sacred union of Gaia, the nurturing earth with her endless capacity for growth and renewal, and Uranus, the vast sky with his infinite expanse of possibility, came into being not with thunderous proclamation or celestial fanfare, but with the gentle certainty of dawn breaking over ancient mountains. Her first breath drew in the essence of both realms, the solid wisdom of earth and the boundless perspective of heaven, weaving them together into something entirely new. She was not merely a goddess in the way mortals would later understand divinity, with temples and offerings and petitionary prayers. She was the very essence of natural law itself, the quiet force that guides the seasons in their eternal dance from spring's tender emergence through summer's abundant glory, to autumn's wise harvest and winter's necessary rest. She was the invisible hand that keeps the stars in their courses, each celestial body moving in perfect harmony with cosmic principles that require no enforcement because they flow from the fundamental nature of existence itself. Her birth marked the moment when the universe first learned the meaning of balance, when the chaotic energies that had swirled in magnificent confusion since the very first moment of creation began to understand that there could be pattern within freedom, order within spontaneity, justice within change. Unlike her siblings, the mighty titans who would later shake the earth with their tremendous power or command the winds with their voices that could be heard across continents, Themis possessed something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful than any force that could be seen or heard or felt. She carried within her being the very blueprint of cosmic order, the divine understanding that all things must flow in harmony, according to their deepest nature, not through external compulsion, but through the irresistible pull of their own authentic essence. Like a master composer who knows that the most beautiful symphony emerges not from forcing instruments to play against their nature, but from allowing each to contribute its unique voice to a greater harmony. The ancient poets, those whose hearts were still close enough to the beginning to remember the taste of first light, tell us that when Themis first opened her eyes, those orbs that held within them the clarity of mountain springs and the depth of midnight skies The chaotic energies that had swirled since creation's dawn began to settle into patterns. Rivers, which had wandered aimlessly across the landscape, suddenly found their proper beds, carving channels that would carry life-giving water to valleys and plains for countless ages to come. Mountains, which had risen and fallen at random, discovered their true foundations, planting their roots deep in the earth's core and lifting their peaks toward heaven in gestures of eternal aspiration. The wild forces of nature, which had raged without purpose or direction, learned their proper bounds, understanding for the first time that limitation is not imprisonment, but the very condition that makes meaningful expression possible. A river confined to its banks can carve the Grand Canyon, while water without boundaries merely spreads into swampland. She walked through the primordial world with steps so light they barely disturbed the morning dew that collected like diamonds on grass that was learning to grow in organized meadows rather than chaotic tangles. Yet wherever her feet touched the earth, wherever her presence graced the landscape, lasting peace took root. Not the empty peace of death or stagnation, but the dynamic peace of perfect balance, where every element finds its proper place and contributes to the health and beauty of the whole. The very concept of justice, of things being as they should be according to their nature and purpose, flowed from her being like fragrance from a flower that blooms not for praise or recognition, but simply because blooming is what flowers do when they are fully themselves. This was not justice as humans would later understand it, with courts and judgments and punishments, but justice as cosmic principle, the natural tendency of reality to align itself with truth and harmony. Long before the great temple at Delphi became famous throughout the ancient world for Apollo's prophecies, those mysterious utterances that would shape the destinies of kings and kingdoms, that sacred ground belonged to Themis. The mountain itself, with its rocky slopes that caught the first light of dawn and its hidden caves that echoed with whispers from the earth's deep heart, had chosen her as its voice. She was the first to hear the earth's whispers, the first to understand that beneath the mountain's weathered stone lay channels through which divine wisdom could flow like an underground river to reach the minds and hearts of mortals who had grown confused in the complexity of their choices. The Oracle of Themis spoke not in riddles or cryptic verse that required priests to interpret and scholars to debate, but in the clear language of natural truth that resonated in the deepest chambers of the human heart. Her prophecies carried the certainty of sunrise, the reliability of seasons turning in their appointed time, the trustworthy rhythm of tides that have never failed to ebb and flow according to the moon's ancient pull. Those who sought her guidance found not mysterious puzzles to decode with clever reasoning, but gentle illumination of paths they had always known in their deepest hearts, but had forgotten in the noise and confusion of daily existence. Pilgrims would climb the mountain paths to her sanctuary, their feet following trails worn smooth by countless seekers before them, each step wearing away another layer of the rough stone, until the path itself became a meditation on persistence and faith. The journey itself became part of the teaching, as the steady rhythm of walking calmed anxious minds that had been scattered by worry and opened hearts that had been closed by disappointment to receive wisdom. With each step upward, the concerns of the valley below seemed to shrink, not because they became unimportant, but because they found their proper proportion within the vast tapestry of existence. At her temple, surrounded by groves of olive trees, whose silver leaves caught in scattered sunlight like living mirrors, and springs of clear water that bubbled up from unknown depths, carrying the taste of eternity, Themis would sit in quiet contemplation. She needed no dramatic ritual or elaborate ceremony to access divine knowledge, no complex incantations or exotic implements. For her, prophecy was as natural as breathing, as effortless as the way flowers turn their faces toward the sun without conscious thought or deliberate decision. The wisdom flowed through her, not because she grasped after it or demanded it, but because she had made herself transparent to truth, allowing cosmic knowledge to pass through her being, like light through clear water. When mortals approached with their questions about the future, about right and wrong, about the proper course of action in situations where every choice seemed to carry both promise and peril, Themis would listen with the patience of mountains that have watched countless storms pass over their peaks without losing their essential stability. She understood that behind every question about external circumstances lay a deeper longing for harmony, for alignment with the natural order of things, for the peace that comes when one's choices flow from wisdom rather than fear. Her answers came not as commands from on high delivered with the weight of divine authority that demands blind obedience, but as gentle reminders of principles that governed all healthy growth in nature and in human life. Like a wise grandmother sharing ancient knowledge that has been tested by generations of experience, she would help seekers remember what their souls already knew about living in accordance with divine law. Her words had the quality of recognition rather than revelation, causing listeners to think not, "I never knew that," but "of course, I have always known this truth, but had forgotten it." The prophecies of Themis had a unique quality that set them apart from all others that would follow in later ages. They pointed not toward inevitable fate that mortals must accept with resignation, but toward the natural consequences of choices made in harmony or discord with cosmic order. She showed mortals how their decisions rippled outward, like stones cast in still water, creating expanding circles of influence that would eventually return to them, transformed but recognizable, carrying either the blessing of alignment with truth or the teaching that comes from having chosen illusion over reality. Through her oracular wisdom, the concepts of proper timing and sacred seasons became deeply embedded in human consciousness like seeds planted in fertile soil that would sprout and grow across countless generations. She taught that there is a time for planting when the earth is ready to receive new life, and a time for harvest when the fruits have ripened to their fullest potential. A time for action when the moment calls for decisive movement, and a time for rest when the soul needs to gather its strength for the next phase of growth. A time for speaking when words can heal and illuminate, and a time for silence when words would only disturb the delicate process of inner transformation. When Zeus, young and mighty, his power crackling through the cosmos like lightning seeking its ground, rose to claim dominion over the heavens and earth after overthrowing his father Kronos in a battle that shook the very foundations of reality, he found himself faced with a challenge greater than any he had fought in the war against the Titans. How does one rule justly over gods and mortals alike, beings of such different natures and needs that their very existence seemed to mock the possibility of unified governance? How does raw power, no matter how tremendous, transform itself into legitimate authority that beings will follow not from fear, but from recognition of its rightness? The young god king stood upon the summit of Mount Olympus, master of thunder and lightning, wielder of forces that could reshape landscapes with a gesture. Yet he felt within himself a troubling uncertainty. Victory in battle had proven his strength, but strength alone could not create the stable order that would allow civilization to flourish under divine protection. In his wisdom, which was growing even as his power matured, Zeus recognized that true kingship required more than strength of arm or mastery of the elements that bow to divine will. It required the deeper understanding that only Themis possessed, the knowledge of how power could serve justice rather than merely serving itself. And so, in one of the most significant unions in all of mythology, a marriage that would echo through the ages and establish the very foundation of legitimate governance, the god of sky and storm took as his wife the goddess of divine order and natural law. Their courtship was not the passionate whirlwind that mortals might imagine, filled with dramatic gestures and overwhelming emotions, but rather a careful recognition of complementary natures that could create something greater than either could achieve alone. Zeus brought to their union his tremendous power and his ability to inspire others to great deeds, while Themis offered her deep understanding of the principles that must guide such power if it is to create rather than destroy. Together they represented the marriage of might and right, the perfect balance between the ability to act and the wisdom to know when and how action should be taken. Their wedding was celebrated not with the wild revelry that would characterize later divine festivities, but with ceremonies that reflected the solemnity and significance of what was taking place. The very elements seemed to participate in the celebration, as gentle rains blessed the earth and favorable winds carried the fragrance of flowers across vast distances. This was not merely the union of two powerful beings, but the establishment of a new principle in cosmic governance. Their marriage was not born of passion or political convenience, though both emotions and practical considerations played their parts, but of a profound recognition that power without justice becomes tyranny that eventually destroys itself, while justice without power remains merely wishful thinking that changes nothing in the harsh realities of existence. Together, they represented the ideal of righteous governance, the marriage of might and right, that forms the foundation of all legitimate authority that beings can follow with clear conscience and willing hearts. Themis brought to this union her deep understanding of cosmic law, her ability to see beyond the immediate moment with its pressing demands and urgent crises to the long-term consequences of every decision. She became Zeus's most trusted counselor, the quiet voice of wisdom that guided his judgments and tempered his sometimes impulsive nature with reminders of how present choices would echo through future generations. Under her gentle but persistent influence, Zeus learned to listen before he spoke, to consider the full implications before he acted, to seek the path that would bring the greatest harmony to the greatest number, rather than simply imposing his will because he possessed the power to do so. The wild young god who had once threatened to tear the cosmos apart with his unchecked ambition gradually matured into a ruler whose decisions reflected the deeper wisdom of natural law, rather than the arbitrary whims of personal preference. Together, they established the fundamental principles that would govern both divine and mortal realms for ages to come, creating a template for leadership that would inspire the best rulers throughout history. The concept of divine right, properly understood not as the right to do whatever one pleases, but as the obligation to align one's will with cosmic justice, the idea that legitimate authority flows from harmony with universal principles rather than from mere force, the understanding that even gods must answer to truths greater than their own desires. From the sacred union of Zeus and Themis, that marriage of power and wisdom that established the very foundation of just governance, came forth daughters who would shape the very fabric of existence in ways both subtle and profound. First emerged the three fates, known to the Greeks as the Moirai, beings so fundamental to the structure of reality that even the mighty Zeus, master of thunder and king of gods, would bow to their authority without question or resentment. These were not arbitrary forces imposed upon creation from outside, but the natural expression of cosmic law working itself out through the medium of individual destiny. Clotho, the spinner, sits at her eternal wheel in a chamber that exists outside of time as mortals understand it, where past and future meet in an eternal present moment. Her fingers, more delicate than spider silk yet stronger than adamantine chains, move with gentle precision that has never faltered in all the ages since creation began. Each strand that emerges from her wheel is perfect for its purpose, carrying within its gossamer strength all the potential for joy and sorrow, triumph and learning, love and loss that a lifetime might contain. The threads shimmer with possibilities that will unfold according to choices yet to be made, each fiber containing the seeds of countless potential futures that wait to be born through the alchemy of free will working within cosmic law. From her spinning wheel flow the silver threads of mortal life, each one unique in its pattern and texture, yet all partaking of the same fundamental substance that connects every living being to every other in an invisible web of shared destiny. Some threads gleam with the promise of great deeds and public recognition, while others glow with the quieter light of private virtue and hidden kindness. Some are shot through with the gold of wisdom earned through experience, while others sparkle with the diamond clarity of innocence that sees truth without the filters of cynicism or doubt. Lachesis, the measurer, takes up each thread as it flows from her sister's wheel like a river of liquid starlight. And with tools that exist beyond physical dimension, she determines its length and pattern according to wisdom that encompasses not just individual need, but the requirements of the greater tapestry of existence. With the deep understanding inherited from Themis, she weaves into each life exactly the experiences needed for the soul's growth, the challenges that will call forth hidden strengths like pressure that transforms coal into diamonds, the gifts that will serve not only personal development, but the greater good of all creation. Her measuring is not the cold calculation of a cosmic accountant tallying debits and credits, but the loving precision of a master gardener who knows exactly how much sunlight and rain each plant needs to reach its fullest flowering. She sees the soul's potential like a sculptor sees the statue hidden within rough marble. And she shapes circumstances that will chip away everything that is not essential, revealing the true self that has waited since birth to be born into conscious expression. Atropos, the cutter, bears the sacred shears that bring each mortal story to its natural conclusion. And her task is perhaps the most misunderstood of all divine functions. Hers is not the cruel act of destruction that mortals fear when they think of death, but the loving completion that allows each soul to harvest the fruits of its earthly journey and move on to whatever lies beyond the veil of physical existence. Her shears cut not with violence but with the gentle finality of autumn leaves releasing their hold on branches to drift down in spirals of gold and crimson, having given their beauty to the world and now returning to nourish new growth. When Atropos cuts a thread, she does so with infinite compassion and perfect timing, knowing that every story has its natural conclusion, and that to extend it beyond its proper limit would be cruelty rather than kindness. Like a wise author who knows exactly when to end a chapter so that its meaning resonates most clearly, she brings each life to its close at the moment when its lessons have been learned and its gifts have been given to the world. Together, these three sisters embody the principle that even apparent randomness serves a deeper pattern, that what mortals call fate is actually the unfolding of a cosmic justice too vast and complex for human understanding to fully grasp, yet simple enough for the heart to recognize as profoundly right. They represent the truth that Themis knew from the beginning, that all things move according to laws that transcend individual desire, yet ultimately serve the highest good of each unique soul and the collective evolution of consciousness itself. From the same divine union came the Horai, the seasons, daughters who bring order to the passage of time itself and teach mortals the sacred rhythms that govern all healthy growth. Thallo, the spirit of spring, carries in her hands the green promise of new beginnings, the gentle power that coaxes life from winter's apparent death and reminds the world that no ending is ever final, that every conclusion contains within it the seed of a new beginning. Her touch awakens dormant seeds that have waited in patient darkness for their moment to emerge into light, and her presence fills the air with the intoxicating fragrance of possibility made manifest. As the great wheel of ages turned and mortals began to gather in communities, abandoning the simple life of wandering hunters and gatherers to build the first cities with their complex networks of cooperation and competition, establishing the earliest codes of law that would attempt to govern human behavior through reason rather than mere force. Themis became their unseen guardian and guide. She was present in every assembly where justice was sought with sincere hearts, every gathering where disputes were settled through patient deliberation rather than violence, every moment when human hearts reached toward fairness and truth despite the easier path of self-interest and expedience. Her influence flowed like an invisible river through the councils of early lawgivers, those brave souls who dared to imagine that human behavior could be guided by principles higher than personal advantage or tribal loyalty. She whispered inspiration to minds that struggled to translate the cosmic principles of justice into practical rules that could govern the complex interactions of beings who possessed free will and therefore the capacity for both great good and terrible harm. The ancient Greeks, whose civilization would become a beacon of learning and culture for ages to come, understood in their bones that law was not merely human invention born of social convenience, but a reflection of cosmic principles that Themis had woven into the very foundation of reality, like golden threads running through a vast tapestry. When they gathered in their agoras to debate and decide matters of public policy, their voices rising and falling in the ancient rhythm of democratic discourse, they believed they were participating in something sacred, aligning their mortal community with the divine order that governed all things, from the movement of planets to the growth of grain in carefully tended fields. Themis taught mortals to distinguish between justice and mere revenge, that primitive impulse that seeks to answer injury with injury in an endless cycle of retaliation that serves no one and heals nothing. She showed them the difference between law and arbitrary power, helping them understand that true legal authority must flow from principles that serve the common good, rather than the personal interests of those who happen to possess the strength to enforce their will upon others. True justice, she revealed through the quiet influence of her presence in human hearts, does not seek to cause pain for its own sake, but to restore balance to relationships that have been damaged by wrongdoing, not to dominate but to harmonize, not to punish but to heal the tears in the social fabric that allow community life to flourish. Her influence could be felt most clearly in the development of hospitality laws, those sacred customs that protected travelers and strangers who found themselves far from home and dependent upon the kindness of people they had never met before. She whispered to human hearts the understanding that the wanderer at the door might be a god in disguise, testing the moral character of those who possessed comfort and safety. That generosity offered to those in need creates bonds stronger than any chain forged by human hands. That kindness offered freely without expectation of return somehow returns multiplied beyond all reasonable expectation. These laws of hospitality became so deeply embedded in ancient culture that to violate them was considered not merely impolite, but actually impious, an offense against the very gods who might themselves appear as beggars or strangers seeking shelter. The host who offered food and protection to the unknown traveler was participating in a sacred ritual that connected earth to heaven, demonstrating through practical action the principle that all beings are ultimately family in the vast household of creation. In the ancient world, oaths sworn in the name of Themis carried special weight that ordinary promises could never match, for she was known to be present whenever solemn promises were made with sincere intention to honor them, regardless of changing circumstances. Those who broke such vows did not merely face human punishment administered by courts and magistrates, but opened themselves to the cosmic consequence of acting against divine law itself, disrupting the fundamental harmony that holds the universe together. Such consequences might not appear immediately, but they would manifest with the same inevitability as harvest follows planting, bringing to the oath-breaker the bitter fruit of broken trust and shattered relationships. She guided the development of proper religious observance, teaching mortals the importance of honoring the gods not through fear or flattery designed to curry divine favor for personal advantage, but through sincere recognition of the sacred forces that sustain all life and make possible every blessing they enjoyed. Under her influence, worship became less about bargaining with divine power for material benefits and more about aligning human will with cosmic harmony, creating within the soul a condition of receptivity to wisdom and grace that no external ritual could manufacture. The concept of natural rights, that revolutionary idea that certain principles of justice transcend human law and apply to all beings by virtue of their existence rather than by grant from earthly authorities, flowed from Themis's teachings like water from a spring that never runs dry. She planted in human consciousness the seed that would eventually bloom into the understanding that justice is not something granted by rulers as a favor to subjects, but something that rulers must recognize and protect as stewards of cosmic law. In the magnificent halls of Olympus, where gods of tremendous power and sometimes volatile temperament gathered to decide the fate of worlds with decisions that would echo through mortal history for countless generations, Themis served as the voice of measured wisdom that transformed potential chaos into ordered deliberation. Her presence had the remarkable effect of calming even the most heated divine debates, her counsel guiding immortal beings who possess the power to reshape reality with a thought toward decisions that serve the greater cosmic good rather than personal preference or momentary passion. The great throne room of Zeus, with its pillars of white marble that seemed to stretch infinitely upward, and its floors of polished stone that reflected light like captured starshine, became under her influence a place where wisdom could flourish alongside power. When the gods assembled to hear petitions from mortals, or to debate whether divine intervention was warranted in human affairs, her quiet presence reminded them that their immortal status carried with it immortal responsibility. Unlike other advisors who might speak from personal interest or political calculation, seeking to advance their own agendas through clever manipulation of divine opinion, Themis offered counsel that flowed directly from her understanding of universal law, like water from a pure spring. When gods debated whether to intervene in mortal affairs with displays of power that would leave no doubt of divine authority, whether to punish transgressions with swift retribution, or show mercy that might encourage further wrongdoing, whether to grant boons to favored mortals, or withhold divine aid to teach the lessons that only struggle can provide, her voice cut through the confusion with crystal clarity. She taught her fellow deities that true divine power lies not in the ability to act impulsively according to the whims of the moment, but in the wisdom to act in harmony with cosmic principle, even when such action requires patience or restraint, that feels unnatural to beings accustomed to having their will immediately manifest in reality. Like a master musician who knows that the most beautiful melody emerges not from playing every note possible, but from choosing exactly the right notes at precisely the right time. Effective divine action requires restraint as much as power, silence as much as sound, emptiness as much as fullness. Her counsel shaped the very nature of divine intervention in mortal affairs, establishing principles that would govern how gods could interact with human civilization without overwhelming the delicate balance that allows free will to operate meaningfully. Through her patient influence, the gods learned to work through natural law rather than against it, to guide mortal development through inspiration and opportunity, rather than through overwhelming displays of force that would reduce humans to mere puppets dancing to divine whims. When Zeus was tempted to reshape the world according to his immediate will, perhaps growing impatient with the slow pace of human moral development, or frustrated by the persistent tendency of mortals to choose foolishness over wisdom, Themis would gently remind him of consequences that stretched far beyond the present moment. She helped him see that every divine action creates ripples that spread through time like waves from a stone cast into still water, affecting not just the immediate situation, but the fundamental patterns that govern reality itself. A hasty intervention might solve an immediate problem while creating 10 new difficulties that would plague future generations, while patient restraint might allow temporary suffering that ultimately strengthens character and builds the wisdom necessary for lasting happiness. She taught him to consider not just what mortals wanted in the moment, but what they needed for their spiritual growth across the long arc of their development as conscious beings. Her teaching method was never harsh correction or stern rebuke that might provoke the divine temper and create resistance to wisdom, but the gentle presentation of alternatives that allowed the recipient to discover truth through their own reasoning. She would show rather than tell, revealing through careful questioning how a proposed course of action aligned or conflicted with the deeper currents of cosmic order that determine whether any action will ultimately create harmony or discord. Through her patient guidance, offered with the persistence of water gradually wearing smooth the roughest stone, the chaotic early days of divine rule gave way to a more mature understanding of godly responsibility. The deities learned that their immortal power came with immortal obligation, that their ability to shape reality carried with it the duty to shape it wisely, according to principles that served not just their own preferences, but the highest good of all creation. Themis demonstrated through her own example that the highest form of strength is the power to hold back when action would cause more harm than good, the courage to remain silent when words would disturb the delicate process of natural development, the wisdom to trust in the organic unfolding of events rather than forcing premature resolution that satisfies immediate anxiety but prevents deeper healing. As the great wheel of ages turned and the old gods gradually withdrew from active involvement in mortal affairs, stepping back from the immediate governance of human civilization to allow their children the space to grow into their own wisdom and power, Themis did not fade or diminish like smoke dissipating in the wind. For she was never dependent on worship or recognition for her existence, being woven so fundamentally into the fabric of reality itself that she could no more disappear than gravity could cease to pull objects toward Earth, or time could stop its eternal flow from past through present into future. Her essence had become part of the very structure of existence, written into the laws that govern how things work at the deepest level, encoded in the patterns that repeat themselves across all scales of reality, from the dance of subatomic particles to the spiral arms of galaxies wheeling through space. She lives on, not as memory or symbol, but as active principle, continuously creating justice and order through the countless choices made by conscious beings who may never have heard her name, but who feel her influence in their hearts whenever they choose truth over falsehood, fairness over favoritism, the difficult right over the easy wrong. In every courtroom where justice is genuinely sought by those who have dedicated their lives to the service of law, her presence lingers still like incense that continues to perfume the air long after the ceremony has ended. When judges weigh evidence with careful impartiality, setting aside personal bias and social pressure to focus solely on truth, when juries deliberate with sincere desire to reach the right conclusion, regardless of popular opinion or personal convenience, when lawyers argue not merely to win at any cost, but to serve the deeper cause of fairness that makes civilization possible, they participate unknowingly in her eternal work. She continues to whisper in the hearts of those who choose difficult right over easy wrong, her voice so gentle it might be mistaken for conscience, yet so persistent it will not be silenced by rationalization or compromise. She speaks to those who tell truth when lies would be more convenient, who stand for principle when principle demands personal sacrifice, who defend the vulnerable when defense brings no reward save the inner satisfaction of having done what honor requires. Her voice is the quiet certainty that tells the human conscience what it already knows about justice and honor, cutting through the noise of conflicting opinions and social pressures to reveal the simple clarity that lies at the heart of every moral choice. In the eternal turning of seasons, her daughters still weave their ancient patterns with the same precision and care that has characterized their work since the beginning of time. Spring returns with unfailing hope, teaching mortals that no winter lasts forever, and that life always finds a way to triumph over death, that renewal is possible even after the longest night of despair. Summer blazes with abundant life, demonstrating the magnificent potential that exists within every seed of possibility when it is nurtured by proper conditions and allowed to reach its full expression. Autumn teaches the wisdom of letting go, showing through the graceful release of leaves and the generous sharing of harvest that true fulfillment comes not from grasping but from giving, not from accumulating, but from distributing the fruits of growth to nourish new life. Winter offers the deep rest that prepares for new growth, the necessary stillness that allows the soul to integrate the lessons learned through the active seasons and gather strength for whatever challenges and opportunities the next cycle might bring. Through this eternal cycle, mortals learn again and again the lessons of proper timing and natural order, discovering that there is indeed a season for every purpose under heaven, and that wisdom lies in aligning human activity with these deeper rhythms rather than fighting against them. The fates continue their sacred work in realms beyond mortal perception, spinning and measuring and cutting the threads of destiny with the same loving precision that has characterized their labor since consciousness first stirred in the primordial void. Yet their labor is not the grim mechanical process that some imagine, cold and calculating as a cosmic computer program, but the loving craftsmanship of cosmic order, ensuring that every soul receives exactly the experiences needed for its growth and learning. Modern seekers who climb mountains in search of clarity, following paths worn smooth by countless pilgrims before them, who sit in meditation seeking inner peace in a world that seems to grow more chaotic with each passing day, who study philosophy in hopes of understanding universal principles that might bring meaning to existence, walk unknowingly in the footsteps of ancient pilgrims who sought Themis at her oracular shrine. The questions may be phrased in contemporary language and the answers sought through modern methods, but the longing for alignment with truth remains constant across all ages and cultures, proving that some needs are so fundamental to human nature that they transcend all barriers of time and circumstance. In families where children learn the difference between right and wrong not through harsh punishment, but through patient example, where parents teach by living the values they hope to instill, the influence of Themis continues to shape human civilization, one heart at a time. In communities where neighbors help neighbors without thought of reward, where strangers are welcomed and the vulnerable are protected, where the common good takes precedence over individual advantage, her principles work themselves out through countless small acts of kindness and justice. In nations where laws serve justice rather than power, where the rights of all citizens are protected regardless of their station, where leaders understand themselves as servants rather than masters, she remains the invisible foundation upon which all healthy society rests. Her greatest teaching was perhaps this simple truth that has the power to transform every life that truly receives it. Justice is not something imposed from outside by authorities or institutions, but something that emerges naturally when beings follow their truest nature and deepest wisdom. Like flowers that turn towards sunlight without conscious effort or deliberate decision, hearts that remain open to cosmic wisdom naturally align themselves with principles of fairness and harmony, creating conditions where all life can flourish. She showed that the source of all authentic order lies not in external rules enforced by punishment and reward, but in the inner recognition of what serves the highest good for all beings, including oneself properly understood. When this recognition dawns in human consciousness, right action flows as naturally as water flows downhill, requiring no struggle or self-sacrifice, because it has become the path of least resistance for a soul that has remembered its true nature. And so the story of Themis continues, not as ancient myth relegated to dusty books and academic study, but as living reality that unfolds fresh in every moment, when a conscious being chooses wisdom over folly, love over fear, truth over comfortable illusion. For as long as any being seeks truth over falsehood, justice over injustice, harmony over chaos, her presence remains active in the world, patient as mountains that endure through countless storms, gentle as dawn light that gradually illuminates the landscape without violence or force, eternal as the stars themselves that have guided travelers through dark nights since time began. In the quiet moments before sleep, when the day's struggles fade like shadows before the rising sun and the soul turns inward toward the peace that surpasses understanding, mortals may still sense her presence hovering at the edge of awareness. She is there in the deep, knowing that settles over the heart like a gentle blanket. The wordless understanding that despite all appearances to the contrary, all is fundamentally well. That justice flows like a mighty river beneath the surface of apparent chaos. That order and meaning underlie all existence like bedrock beneath shifting sand. Rest now in that ancient peace, beloved seeker, carried on the gentle currents of cosmic law toward the shore of perfect understanding. where all questions find their answers and all longings discover their fulfillment in the eternal embrace of divine order that was established before the first star learned to shine and will endure long after the last mountain has been worn to sand by the patient work of wind and rain and time. In this sacred stillness, feel the presence of Themis herself, keeper of cosmic law, guardian of natural order, the gentle goddess who ensures that justice will always have the final word in the great story of existence. And let her eternal peace carry you softly into the realm of dreams where all souls remember their divine origin and rest in the knowledge that they are forever held in the loving embrace of cosmic law. I hope this journey through the wisdom of Themis has brought you the same sense of divine peace that she offered to gods and mortals alike. May her eternal principles of justice and natural order guide you toward deep, restorative sleep. If you found comfort in this ancient tale of cosmic harmony, I invite you to subscribe for more mythological stories that will cradle your nights to come. You can now let this video continue playing in the background. The relaxing music that follows will help you drift even deeper into peaceful slumber. Settle in completely and allow your body to surrender to rest. Just as Themis watches over the eternal balance of the universe, this gentle melody will watch over your sleep. Sweet dreams.